Have you ever heard about cultural entrepreneurship? Do you believe it exists, especially in Barbados? On February 1st, 2015, the Cultural Industries Development Act was proclaimed. And according to that legislation, a cultural entrepreneur is a person who organizes, manages, and assumes the risk of a business or enterprise in the cultural industries sector. Aundrea King, Interim Director of the Cultural Industries Development Authority, says cultural entrepreneurship is alive in Barbados.
Of course, there is such a thing as cultural entrepreneurship, and I could say that in Barbados, we would have been seeing it over the last 2 or 3 decades. Off the top of my head, I can think about 5 who have come to prominence in the last decade alone. In fashion and accessories, we have Avark, Angelique's Creations, and Azipo's Creations. Then in music, I can think about Fast Entertainment. They've been having the reggae festival for the last 10 years. And then the Gap Theatre within the Performing Arts Theatre in particular, which started last year or the year before, doing wonderful things in the Gap, St. Lawrence Gap. So right away, I can call names that practice cultural entrepreneurship.
Aundrea Heights is the Senior Business Development Officer at the Cultural Industries Development Authority. He helps cultural practitioners develop the business of their craft. He insists that not every creative person is an entrepreneur.
I think that we in Barbados and some parts of the Caribbean have a natural thing, or perhaps we've been a practice of being what you would call part-time cultural entrepreneurs. Because I guess that is the way the system is being set up. We very much express and live our creativity. So the idea of making money from it as a business and thinking of it from a structural business perspective may not have been something that we've thought of or put structures in for that purpose. But anytime you are thinking about cultural entrepreneurship, you have to have that implicit desire to create the product to generate revenue. You have to understand there is an operation and a supply model that is, that exists for your business. And you understand the concept of market consumption and supplying for that market. Because in entrepreneurship, you're thinking of money and business. So you're creating your cultural product for the purpose of business. And that is where the entrepreneurship is. And I think that is where we've had a huge gap or difference in that sometimes we have people who create things and products and services and goods for the purpose of the enjoyment of others, for the purpose of maybe making a few dollars, and not necessarily for the purpose of constructing it as a business.
Kurt Phillips and his group Chelsea Boys could be considered cultural entrepreneurs. They're hosts of one of the Cropover's fastest growing fests called Puff of Color.
Entertainment is a time-consuming business. We in Chelsea Boys, all of us, we have a normal day job, a normal 8 to 4. So it's pretty difficult for us to run around from country to country. If you're going to do it, you're going to have to do it as a business right through. But the entertainment business is pretty funny sometimes. We chose the whole Puff of Color in Cropover because we always wanted to do a Juve event, but a Juve event with a difference. And we thought that, Cropover would have been one of the best places to do it. We found that, not that the NCF can't hold their own, but we realized that they can't do it all by themselves. And it takes persons like us to help the festival along. We attract a wide variety of age groups. You will find the 18-year-old that just left school or college, and you're coming straight into Cropover and you're partying now without mommy and daddy, straight up to the 50s. We have had lots of tourists hitting us up on Instagram and Facebook asking about the event. We had persons as far as Australia coming in for the event. There are also a lot of persons from overseas that wanted tickets, but they couldn't get tickets because they're all sold out. So it does have a market for the overseas clients, and we will be looking to try to see what we can do to get those persons into Puffacolor.
Many practicing cultural entrepreneurs have been looking to international markets to sustain their business.
I make a living for what I do. You know, I made a decision to do this, and this is what I do. And when I do it, I say as a business. So yes, I consider myself a cultural entrepreneur. I used to do operations and accounts and sales and marketing with an airline, and you know, after 1995, when Raga Raga became extremely popular, I made a conscious decision to go into music full time and treat it as a business of mine.
How was that transition in the initial stage for you, seeing that Barbados is one of those places where, you know, it may be a bit challenging for persons working in the creative industry?
It was a big decision to make. I must say that if my wife wasn't doing a steady job, it would have been more difficult to do. But the popularity of Raga Raga outside of the Caribbean diaspora made me believe that maybe I was onto something. And I said to myself, you know, once I do this, it means I must continue to look at the international market rather than just focusing on crop over. Crop over is only 6 weeks of the year really, and I really can't make a living from doing business in Barbados. But over the years, I've actually developed a whole lot of relationships across North America and in the UK especially, and those have worked for me.
I'm a cultural entrepreneur. I set trends, but I did things that people follow on to. And this is great concert. As I take it upon myself as an artist to put on a concert for myself and not wait until somebody call me for a concert. He said, cheese on bread, man. Let me do my own concert on a body. Yeah? So I call myself here as a cultural entrepreneur.
As in any other sector, enterprises and entrepreneurs in the cultural industries may encounter a number of challenges. One major obstacle is the lack of structure, or what Aundrea Heights calls ecosystems.
A lot of our cultural ecosystems, whether it be in performing arts, for example, or in fashion, or in music, don't exist completely. So you may have, for example, in music, you may have tons of people who are performers, who are writers of music, who are producers of music, but things like the sale of music products, the legal aspects, attorneys who are concentrating specifically on providing the legal framework for music, a lot of those things are missing, so the ecosystems don't tend to function efficiently enough.
Cashflow is also a challenge for many cultural entrepreneurs.
The biggest challenge is always the capital, having the required amount of capital to make the business viable, to get it past those first 3 or 5 years that business analysts say is necessary for a business to really start to function and be successful. But if you check all your boxes and you have your investment lined up and you have your plan, your business plan that is flexible and can adapt to circumstances and situations in your environment, your political environment, your social environment, then you can perhaps make a success of it. Critical also is identifying your markets. You know, it is all right to do market research, but you also have to have that key market intelligence that tells you who is going to buy your product, how much they're willing to pay for it. Sometimes we create for the sake of creating and expect that just because we create, people will buy, but market forces determine how successful you are.
It is important for persons aspiring to generate an income from their craft to create holistic business plans. The Cultural Industries Development Authority is here to help.
There are two key incentives in place that can immediately help cultural entrepreneurs, cultural practitioners, and that's Section 31 in the Act, which states that if an investor can invest in a cultural project or a cultural entrepreneur or practitioner, and the money that they invest in that particular project or entrepreneur or practitioner, the investor can claim 100% of it back on their assessable income for a period of 5 years. And then there is, of course, the duty-free on tools of trade. Quite a number of our practitioners cannot import for a number of reasons, and one of the major reasons is because of the high import duties on whatever it is they may have to import if it's not listed in the tariff, in the customs tariff book. And so with this particular incentive, that's something they do not have to worry about.
The Cultural Industries Development Authority provides assistance in a number of areas, including business development.
We're also here to identify markets and opportunities through our partners. We work with a number of partners such as Caribbean Export, BIDC, BCSI, in identifying opportunities for export of the products. And we also work with other partners in advising on what is necessary to support the development of products as well, such as the National Culture Foundation, because we still need to get the good to a particular standard to get it to market, whether domestically or internationally.
The legislation also provides tax-based incentives. However, to benefit, cultural practitioners and entrepreneurs must register with the Cultural Industries Development Authority.
If you want to use the tax-based incentives, the concessions, you must have an approved cultural project. Now, the process for that approval of a cultural project is outlined in sections 12 and 13. You write the Cultural Industries Development Authority through the Ministry of Culture, Sport and Youth for approval, including your project proposal. And the way to frame that proposal is outlined specifically in section 13.
The Cultural Industries Development Authority has been established and the Cultural Industries Development Act is in place. Cultural entrepreneurs are encouraged to take advantage of both.
The cultural industries can be a viable sector. I mean, we've seen it in practice over the last 40 years. The Crop Over Festival is a great example of the creative sector generating revenue. Most recent figures I would have heard is 55 million US generated in the crop over period, in that six week, 3 month period. But consider that multiplied. I think that there needs to be an appreciation, particularly from the sector that can invest, from the segment of the community that can invest, from those high net worth individuals, to recognize that the creative sector is a new sector that can be invested in and get great returns. And that's why that particular incentive in Section 31, where you get back 100% of your investment on whatever you invest in a practitioner or an approved project, is so key to this legislation and this moment of our development.
You may contact the Cultural Industries Development Authority at 621-2700, extension 740, 715, or 707. You may also email andre.hoyt@barbados.gov.bb or barbadosartists@gmail.com. The Cultural Industries Development Act may be downloaded from www.gisbarbados.gov.bb.
We welcome your feedback on our programs. You may email your comments to bgisfeedback@barbados.gov.bb. You may also view our website at www.gisbarbados.gov.bb or subscribe to our YouTube channel, the BGIS.